Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to set up back button autofocus, and I'm going to show you how to do a couple of different customizations that I find helpful for taking over complete control of your autofocus system on your Canon RP. So let's get right into it. Now the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have your dial set to manual mode, because we want to make all of these changes in manual mode, and then we will save these into your C settings. So once you're set to manual mode, you're going to go into your menu and you're going to go to Custom Function 3 Operations/Others, and you're going to go in here, and then we want to navigate over to the 5th tab, and this is where you're going to see all of your button customizations. On the left, you're going to see button customizations for your stills photography, and on the right, you're going to see button customizations for videography. So if we hit set and we go in here, this is where you can make your actual changes. So we're going to start with stills photography changes. So on the left-hand side column here, we're going to go to the actual shutter button. And what we want to do, by default, it's set to metering and autofocus start, but we want to take the autofocus start off from the front button. So we're actually going to go and set it to metering start only. So set that to metering start only. We're going to go down. I leave the movie button just as is. We're going to leave that alone. Now this is a change that I like to make. Now the manual function button I set to be my depth of field preview, and that's because I use a Canon R6 which has a dedicated depth of field preview button, and I like to have a depth of field preview button, so I make the manual function button the depth of field preview button. So you're going to go in there and you're going to set that to depth of field preview. Go down, and this is where we have the autofocus on. Now you're just going to leave that as is, so the metering and autofocus start are just going to be set right on the autofocus button like it is default, so leave that there. This is another change we're going to make. We're going to go to the star button, and we're going to set that to eye detection autofocus. Now the reason we do that is that's going to actually allow you to turn on and off eye detection. So if you're using face detection, I find that sometimes it could be a little sketchy when you're in like a darker area or something like that, in which case sometimes turning off eye detection and just using face detection tends to be a little more accurate. So that's why I like to have the ability to just flip it on and off like that real quick. So going down here, here's another interesting change that I like to make with the RP. I set the autofocus select button to one shot / servo. This is going to give you the ability to change between one shot and servo autofocus, and again, in darker scenarios where I find the RP autofocus can really struggle when in servo, I find that if I go into one shot, it can be very, very accurate. So I like to have another dedicated button to be able to flip right into one shot if I'm in a lower light environment, because I do find that the autofocus works much, much better in one shot versus servo. So that's why I have that button customized that way. Now going further down, I have the left button select on the dial here set to the Q menu. So this way I can just quickly jump right into the Q menu rather than having to mess with the touchscreen. And this allows me to make any kind of real quick changes in the Q menu just hitting that left button. And the reason that I've changed it to the left button is because down here I have changed the center set button to actually set autofocus point to center. Now, the reason that I do that is because I shoot with a Canon R6 preliminarily, and that's the way that the R6 is set by default. So I do this to make the RP more similar to the way my R6 works, but I also do like having that set button right there to just set my autofocus back to the center whenever I need it, because we don't have a joystick with the RP, so you are using the touchscreen, and it is just easier to just hit that button and bring it right back to the center when you need it to. So that covers the changes that I made for stills photography. So let's go over to the right and let's check out what I do for video, because there are a couple changes here. Now I leave the manual function button alone. I don't make any changes there. The autofocus, I didn't make any changes. The star button is now going to be set to the default as well. It's the servo autofocus pause, but I do find that to be a useful feature. Now going down, I do still have the left button on the dial set to open up my Q menu, and then I do have, again, the set button set to set my autofocus point to center. So once you've made all of these changes into your custom buttons, then what you want to do is you want to navigate back, and we want to go over to the yellow menu, tab 6. And this is where you can now change your custom shooting mode. So you can actually save all of these settings right into your C1 or C2 or C3 settings. Now, one thing to be aware of when you do this, all of the other settings that you're going to have set, like your burst rate mode, your autofocus settings, your servo mode, your white balance, your picture profile, all of these settings, your shutter speed, your aperture, they're all going to set exactly the way that you have them set when you save these in to your C1 mode. So you want to make sure that whatever you want your default kind of setup to be is what you're going to set all of these other settings up to, and then go ahead and save it in to one of your C modes, because then when you flip over to C1, you know exactly what all of these settings are going to be when you flip right over to that C1. And that can be a really, really big advantage if, say, like you set up a wildlife setup and you see a bird flying and you just want to flip right into that setting real quick and you want to know exactly where you're going to start from. So once you've set all of those custom settings up and you've now saved those into your C1 or C2 or C3 settings, the next thing you want to do is go back to your manual mode, right? If you're not in your manual mode, make sure you are set to your manual mode. And now what you can actually do is you can clear all of those settings out. So you can go to clear all custom functions. And then what this will do is once you've saved all of those custom settings I just showed you into your C1 settings, now you're going to be able to reset your manual mode back to the default shooting mode. So if you want to have your back button autofocus set up like I just set up for you and all those crazy custom buttons, then you're just going to flip into C1. And if you want it to shoot more like your default setup where you can just press the front button and it's going to autofocus and meter for you and take the shot, then you'll be able to do that too. Anyway, guys, I hope that this helped you out a little bit. If it did, go below, subscribe, click that notification bell, and I'll see you on my next video.